Hola, soy Flavio Fenton, originalmente de México, de la Ciudad de México. Estoy en Georgia Tech, en la Escuela de Física. Soy profesor de física. My main area of research is just complex systems and chaos, and applied to biological systems, because there's a lot of biological systems that do chaotic. But there are other chemical and physical systems that are like that. Over the last few years, I've been enjoying more dynamics of active media, activations of multiple objects with their own dynamics, but then they interact and they form new dynamics. One of the things I study the most is cardiac dynamics. So the heart contracts and produces blood that oxygenates the body. I study the dynamics of the heart is produced by electrical waves. So I learn about the biology and the physiology. I create models that reproduce that dynamics and can be applied to study how a heart contracts normally, but when it goes to arrhythmias, how they form, and methods to then control and prevent these arrhythmias to happen. An arrhythmia is just when the heart is not working correctly, and there are many different ways in which the heart cannot work correctly. So the main idea is the heart contracts, and when there are diseases in the heart, they can be diseases that change the way the heart contracts, just dynamically by the pure dynamics of the heart, how it works. So the heart, when it contracts because it's an electrical wave that propagates through the heart and makes it contract. So for example, when you contract your arm, you contract it because you produce an electrical signal that helps release calcium, and calcium in the cells can make them contract. So your contraction of your hand is produced by an electrical signal. So if I put an electrical stimulus in your arm, I can actually make it contract. So any electrical signal can make the heart contract, one driven by you or driven externally. So the heart has their own cells that are electrical connected, that makes waves that propagate through the heart and make it contract. These waves sometimes can destabilize. So these waves you consider like the waves, imagine like the waves in the stadium when you have the Mexican wave. The stadium, the people stands up and then there's a wave that propagates. So the same way, so instead of standing up is a voltage, so the cell has a different voltage, then pass it to the neighbor, to produce a wave that propagates. So you have a wave that propagates and makes the heart contract. So that's normal, and that's nice. And if you perturb a wave, you block it in one part, it can produce a spiral wave. You start contracting at the period of this spiral wave. These spiral waves, when they form in the heart, actually, and we can measure them, we can see them in the lab, they rotate at a frequency that is faster than the natural pacemakers. But these waves, one of the ways in which the heart can go into an arrhythmia, there are many different ones. We study the ones that are driven by electrical changes. So we call ourselves electricians. So there are other people who study the contraction effects with the fluid dynamics. So we call them the plumbers. So as an electrician, I study the dynamics of these waves that propagate through the heart. We work with do theory simulations and experiments. On the theory side, we create models, mathematical models that describe the voltage and the calcium signals in the cells and combine them to try to understand with the theoretical models some bifurcations, some things that can predict what happens with the cells connect and can be and you pace them at faster frequency, how they can destabilize the dynamics of the waves from a theoretical point of view. Then we can apply those models in simulations. But then this requires a lot of supercomputing, because you want to simulate almost every cell in a heart. So those are millions and millions of cells. And for each cell, you have to describe the process that is happening of the voltage, how it happens biologically, physiologically. So you have a lot of equations that you have to solve for every cell and combine all the cells together. So that requires supercomputers. But nowadays, over the last 10 years, with the advancement in technology of video games, graphic cards have become like a way to try to solve complex problems. So that actually is something that a lot of scientists start to use, including our group, over the last 10 years, using the video games method, but for scientific computing. So when you carry your phone, it's actually a supercomputer in your pocket. And you can do simulations in real time of complex models. So for example, here, let me see if I can show you. This is my cell. So this one, I have a simulation of a heart. This is a three-dimensional heart. So all these things is running in my cell phone, and I can initiate a wave that propagates. So you can see a propagation of the wave. So this is solving billions of differential equations on my phone. You see the wave propagating here, and I can stimulate again. So this is the activation now. The spiral wave that I was talking at the beginning, that's the spiral wave forming, rotating there. So this is, I'm simulating now a spiral wave that's basically tachycardia in the heart, in the small heart. And this is running on my cell phone. When I was a grad student, I could not imagine this time to do it on the phone now. And this is with my wife, Elizabeth Cherry, and my postdoc, Abusar Kaburian. We've been able to do these simulations in a phone. So, and then when you go to experiments, we had to analyze these waves that I show you. You need to see them to analyze them and study them. So to do that, we can do studies in hearts that we can actually add a dye in the heart that is fluorescent. So fluorescent dyes basically are dyes that absorb light at one frequency and emit at a different frequency. So the idea is that if you illuminate the heart with one frequency, this dye is going to return a light, and this light can be proportional to the amount of voltage that the cells have. So the idea is that you can visualize the same way I showed you just the simulation. You can actually visualize an electrical signal by changing intensity of the light that is produced in the heart. So you can visualize these electrical waves, study how they form, why did they form, and then try to study how do they can be interacted and terminated with control methods. So we study basically how these waves form, and we study ways how to actually control them, prevent them to happen, or once they happen, how you can eliminate them. So most cases you have seen in the movies, they come with an electrode. When someone has an effect like that, an arrhythmic effect like that, they come with two paddles and they put it in the chest. They put an electric shock that is about 300 joules. It's very strong, so the whole body moves. But the idea is to excite all the cells in the heart to get it excited, and then you terminate these waves, and then the heart goes back to rhythm. So we try to study methods to do the same thing, but using other methods of control or physics methods that require less energy. So we have developed methods to defibrillate the heart using much lower energy than compared to the ones standard. So we're testing that. When we developed those was using theories in physics, then numerical simulations, and then experiments, and we've been able to create methods to control and terminate arrhythmias at much lower energy that we hope at some point can be applicable in the clinic.